Good evening. I'm David Smith, and this is Week in Review. This evening we'll be discussing the current state of education in the United States and what might be done to improve a rather desperate situation. Good evening again. I'm here with our co-host, Eric Hoffman, who joins us by telephone from San Diego, California, and our co-host and producer, Daniel Moran, who is at the control panel in our studio. I'd like to remind everyone of our Twitter hashtag, WIRTV, and our email, weekinreview.tv, or davidweekinreview.tv, Daniel at weekinreview.tv, and Eric at weekinreview.tv. Please communicate with us, send us your comments, observations, criticisms, etc. I'll ask Daniel, did we have any comments, criticisms, suggestions over the past week or so since our last show?
Actually, we have. On our last episode, we had a gentleman by the name of Norris Daniel left a message on our last episode on our website. To summarize, he was speaking of how nice it is that the internet is able to communicate, and everyday people, even like us, can broadcast over the internet and access and share our ideas worldwide.
Well, that's good. Thank you, Mr. Norris. We appreciate that. And I think we'd all agree it is a good thing that we can get on the internet, we can have our own media, and spread information, and allow people to make their own decisions rather than as in the corporate media where it's more indoctrination than information. Okay, I'd like to start off with a couple of topics this evening that I found interesting. First of all, I'd like to talk about an article that Daniel's wife posted to her Facebook page and that I read yesterday, and I think is rather important, regarding melanoma, which is a form of skin cancer. It's an important subject right now because people are beginning to venture out into the sun again as spring and summer begin to take over from winter. This story was about a young woman who had a biopsy of a small mole when she was a teenager. The lab rendered an incorrect determination on the biopsy. They determined that it was not melanoma and therefore not carcinogenic. And this young woman became a sun worshiper. She would spend, she was a lifeguard during the summer, and she would spend a great amount of time, at least 40 hours per week in the sun during the summer, and then she would tan at tanning salons during the winter. And as has been reported often, these tanning beds can be extremely dangerous to human beings and are a primary source of melanoma in human beings. Anyway, in the story, she develops a very serious tumor in her college years, and it winds up costing her her life because they're unable to treat the melanoma. It goes into remission for a brief period of time, but then she finally succumbs to the carcinoma, which has spread throughout her body into her lymph glands and so on.
That happened to a close friend of mine in Las Vegas. So all of you in the Southwest, like me, be careful.
Yeah, use your SPF, your sun protection factor, which ought to be no less than 40. No less than 40 is sufficient to protect a human being from the ultraviolet rays, which lead to melanoma. So if you're going to go out in the sun, especially your children and so on, please make sure they don't get sunburned, and provide a generous helping of SP40 sunscreen. The article on this young woman is posted on our website, and you can access that and read the article for yourself. She became a crusader in the later part of her illness, trying to warn people about the great dangers of overexposure to the sun. I'd also like to talk about the SOPA and PIPA 2.0, which are coming up for a vote in the Congress this coming week. This one got under the radar. I don't know how many people are aware of it, but they're once again, and it's even more draconian than the original PIPA and SOPA. So please take a look at that article as well. Be aware of what their, this is called the Security, Privacy, and Accountability Act, and it's rather bad. It's kind of a bad.
The government can't stand not to regulate something.
Yeah, it's again, the industries are trying to use the Congress to control. They're trying to get done what they weren't able to do with SOPA and PIPA. So everyone, please take a look at that. The article is linked to our site as well. So here we go again, round two, and we need to get this dealt with and not let them try to do an end run around us once again.
Yeah. It would sure help if we could get rid of Harry Reid.
Well, yeah, but you know, they fixed the elections in Nevada. So
yes, I know.
He got reelected. So
Yeah.
you know, they're we need to get rid of him. We need to get rid of Nancy Pelosi. We need to get rid of the entire leadership. The problem is that they're all you know, financially invested in these mega corporations. They own stock and so on. And
I hear Harry Reid is one of the biggest supporters of this, trying to regulate the internet.
Oh yeah, it's the worst thing for politicians because you know, everything is instant. It goes viral instantly, and we know about exactly what's happening, and you can see where they're trying to manipulate certain news items for particular agendas. Now, I don't want to get into it too deeply, but for example, today, there was additional evidence in the Trayvon Martin case. Apparently, George Zimmerman's head showed wounds consistent with his claims that Trayvon Martin was on top of him, banging his head into the sidewalk. So we don't know the full story about this case, but it's been a media attempt to manipulate this particular story for certain ends.
Well, that's the big picture. I just feel sorry for Zimmerman and the fact that this is all this skewing of the country. The country is starting to develop their own opinion of it and not letting our justice system do its duty.
It's going to be very hard to find a jury to try this.
Agreed.
It's going to be very, very difficult because it's all over the internet and it's all over the television and radio. How are you going to find an impartial, you know, unless you've got someone, well, no, I wouldn't be able to be a juror because I've watched all of it on the internet. You'd have to find someone who's locked away in a log cabin somewhere in the wilderness with their, you know, 10-year supply of food and, you know, 450,000 rounds of ammunition.
Like I said, I learned from the O.J. Simpson case and the other case in Florida, I can't remember the woman's name now, with the baby, just to withhold my judgment on all court cases that are going on.
No. We can't allow this. You know, it's been used for an agenda, to promote a particular agenda, which has been very distracting. It's drawn everyone's attention away from the economy, from the rising price of gas in this country, and so on. So,
oh yeah, well,
that's
the
all.
recovery is nowhere near as strong as everybody's trying to spin it.
Well, the funny part is that we've had in the past this sort of media hoopla over a particular case. The big difference between the two is, in this case, we've got two nobodies that they're purposely making famous in order to get everybody's attention. In the past, I'm referring to, of course, the O.J. Simpson trial. And, you know, here's one famous person doing something. That's like media all over it. But this particular case, it's obvious they're just inflating the whole story in order to get everybody polarized and distracted.
Yeah.
Oh, that's,
I guess it distracts people. If you look at the value of the dollar, the chart on the value of the dollar, yeah, it's been dropping steadily.
well, that's, of course, the hyperinflation starts to set in. And that's going to be really bad this coming summer and fall, as people are probably not going to do much for vacation. And, and it'll look pretty bleak for people wanting to go back to college in the fall.
A lot of people think stock market's going up. What's happening is the dollar's just going down, so the companies are still worth the same.
Well, no one should
pay
any attention to the stock market. It has absolutely nothing to do with anything. It's manipulated, and it means absolutely nothing. It means absolutely nothing. So no one should be paying any attention to it. It has no effect upon anything, really. Other story. We have a real problem with this Arab Spring that has been going on. We have the problem of the Muslim Brotherhood gaining control of the Egyptian parliament. We also have a problem with the Muslim fundamentalists in Libya. There's a report that Eric brought to my attention of Muslim fundamentalists in Libya attacking and desecrating the graves of U.S., British, and Italian soldiers who had fought in Libya during the Second World War. And this shows the problem that we have. How can we possibly provide any cooperation with these groups? And there is up on the screen a photograph of the damage done to various tombstones by these fundamentalists. These are the graves of British, Italian, and U.S. soldiers who died in the liberation of Libya from Italy during the Second World War. And this is just outrageous behavior. And I'd like to know where the outcry is. Had these been Muslim graves desecrated by American soldiers or by Americans, there'd be no end of the hewing and crying on the internet and in the news. Where is the outrage over this kind of behavior?
Well, it does bring together the point that it's hard to sit down at a negotiations table when the other party is not even acting like adults. This is a childish act of vandalism, and it's just hard to negotiate with people like that.
Well, these people are going to be the government of Libya, because just as it happened in Egypt, it's going to happen in Libya. The Salafist Party and the Muslim Brotherhood are going to gain control of the government, despite all the claims of the National Council for Reconciliation in Libya. That's a puppet of the EU, NATO, and the United States. And we just don't have the means to keep them in power.
Yeah, it is outrageous. This shows there's really a war on Christianity in the Middle East. Just we said earlier, the Coptics are almost been exterminated from Egypt.
Well, I guess that just means that they're just joining the politicians here that also have a war on Christianity. Everybody's got a war on Christianity nowadays.
Well, you can't have, if you're going to have the new world order, which is the socialist agenda, you cannot have anything that competes with the state for your devotion.
Right, you have to wipe away all of the old orders.
Yeah, anything that
In order
gives
to
you
come
an
up with theirs.
alternative morality or an alternative theology, you can't have that. The state must be in control
The
of
state
all
must-
aspects of your life.
It must be the source of all things.
So that's what's happening to us. So
Well
now
said.
let's segue into our segment on education. I think this is a very important aspect of what has happened to us in the past century, but certainly in the last 70 years since Dewey took over the control of education and became the model. His program became the model for education in this country. And you'll see on your screen the seal of the Department of Education for the United States of America. Now, there's only one change that I would make here, and it's not education, it's indoctrination. This department is designed to centralize the programs by which we come up with a homogenized and controlled society. Worker bees.
Well, over here at SDSU, not this semester, but last semester, one of the Marxist professors had a class as Mao Zedong is a great thinker.
Was there any alternative class such as Thomas Aquinas, the great thinker, or the politics of Thomas Aquinas?
Well, you didn't have to take the class, but still, what is this? What is this? The Heinrich Himmler Chair of Ethics over there?
Yeah, it's just that's good. That's might as well be it, because that's what they're trying to get this, where the state does no wrong, where everything that the state does is correct and should never be questioned.
Yeah.
You know.
Like I said, I think they should give that professor the Heinrich Himmler Chair of Ethics.
Good grief.
Yeah. I was going to ask you to teach Adolf Hitler as a great thinker. Maybe he could chill enough people.
Well, is there a series? I'd like to know. I mean, because you're going to have Hitler the great thinker, Stalin the great thinker, Lenin the great thinker, Mao the great thinker. Che Guevara the great thinker. Yeah, Tamerlane, Genghis Khan, the great thinker.
The Vandal.
Vlad Tepes, the great thinker. Yeah.
Attila the Hun.
I mean, where does this end?
No, it doesn't. Like I said, but Heinrich Himmler and Hitler are good because they were both socialist, statist utopians like Mao.
Well, that's just ludicrous. And I grant you, it's an elective class. You couldn't possibly make that a mandatory class and not have the alumni demand the firing of the professors. So
I still thought it was an utter disgrace.
Well, that's disgraceful when you try and promote these people as somehow honorable, decent.
Yeah. He only killed 60 million people.
Yeah, just say, only 60 million. Well, that's just more people than more people than were killed totally in the Second World War.
Well, I guess
about 10 million.
Well, I guess the idea there is
if you're going to do a mass murder as a great thinker, you want to get the biggest one.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I guess what they're thinking is if you've been dead long enough and no one can actually remember what you've done, you suddenly become great and you did no wrong.
Well, what was it that Joseph Stalin said? The murder of one person, that's a tragedy. The murder of 1 million people, that's a statistic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, one of our great thinkers probably there. You know, Joseph
There's a,
Stalin.
there's a quote from a great thinker, yeah.
This is, you know, what are they? You know, they're indoctrinating
Maybe the,
our young people with this nonsense,
yeah.
and then they're not teaching them any critical thinking. You know, the old ancient trivium that used to be the foundation of education in the West is no longer taught, and therefore they don't learn grammar. They're not able to define their terms accurately. In fact, it's sort of this fuzzy thinking that comes up. And there's Pavlov up on the screen. They get this Pavlovian response that they're required to provide. If they give the right answer, they get a reward. They get a passing grade. It doesn't, there's no critical thinking, no logic involved. And they certainly don't know how to communicate rhetoric, what they've learned, if they've learned anything. So they're unable to do any of the basic 3 steps of grammar, logic, or rhetoric anymore.
You'd be shocked if you took a college English class now, because with computers and stuff, they don't even stress grammar and spelling and sentence structure or any of that anymore.
They just have you do spell check on the computer, right?
Yeah.
Let the computer do the thinking for you.
Yeah.
So how can you write intelligently if you don't have grammar?
Yeah, I agree with you, David. But
yeah, I don't know how you could do it.
That.
You can't effectively or intelligently communicate anything, nor are you able to determine whether what you're reading is communicating anything substantive or logical to you,
Well,
or whether it's even honest.
It's progressed long enough where you can actually tell what's happening. Everybody's starting to talk in text speak. The same kind of language that they text their friends, that's the language they start using, and it's starting to creep into their college or their education papers and
everyone's a BFF or what is the code for my parents are in the room? They have a special code to tell them, well, I can't text anymore, or I can't comment on that because my parents are in the room. So we have to stop talking about the sex we had last night, type of thing.
I didn't even know, but
so
most of the English classes are just classes in social justice now.
Social justice.
Yeah, instead of like making you even read the literature, read like Whitman and Poe, and it's just social justice.
Well, that's taken over the Catholic Church as well. They don't teach theology anymore. It
really worked well for them too. Huh?
Yeah, it worked well for 2,000 years nearly. But it's social justice. The principal and most important office in the Conference for Catholic Bishops in this country is the Office for Peace and Justice, and the Catholic Charities. Those are the 2 primary offices now, and they're both involved in socialist programs, redistribution of wealth, promotion of Marxism.
Give it up, saving souls.
Yeah, no, they don't. No, you're not supposed to save souls if there is such a thing. No, you're supposed to be engaged in saving, the planet.
Yeah.
They have Gaia guilds in Catholic parishes.
What?
The Gaia guilds. Yes,
okay.
Catholic parishes have Gaia guilds.
That's useful.
There you go. Instead of sending your child off to catechism, you send them off to the Gaia guild to learn how they can recycle and save the earth. And worship Persephone or something. I'm not quite sure.
Well, I think the Catholic Church will be able to close its doors soon.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. They noted that the Vatican launched a probe into the Leadership Conference of Women Religious, which is this feminist lesbian organization that has gained a great deal of power in the Catholic Church. that controls most of the religious orders, the female religious orders in the Catholic Church, and the Vatican has just had enough, and they're going to clean this up, I suppose. They've appointed.
Maybe they should just get rid of it.
Well, that's what I would have done. It's interesting, the archbishop that they chose to lead it, J. Peter Sartain, was formerly the bishop of Little Rock here in Arkansas, and he was elevated to the archbishopric of Seattle. But he's somewhat of a socialist liberal himself, I think. That's my personal opinion. So I think they appointed him so that it was someone who would not be quite as in your face as, say, Charles Chaput, the Archbishop of Philadelphia, would have been. So
you basically have another termite's nest in the Catholic Church following it out.
Yeah, and rather than sending in a fumigator,
exterminator,
a real exterminator, they've sent in someone who's going to kind of plant flowers around the bait, hoping that some sort of toxicology will happen there. That So I was just surprised, and then I understood what was going on. And it's.
They're just trying to disguise it.
They're trying to disguise it, and some little bit will happen, but not very much. You needed someone really strong to go in there, and who is.
No, it sounds like a strong wind, and the Catholic Church is going to fall apart. Like termites.
Well, the hurricane that blew through with John the 23rd's Adornamento, that took all the furniture and everything else out of the structure, and severely damaged the soundness of the structure. Now the termites have gotten to it, and it's just wobbling. It's going to fall.
Yeah.
It's going to fall, and there are going to be a few Orthodox Catholics, very few. I think what Benedict XVI said. There will be a few Orthodox Catholics left, and they'll have to rebuild over another 1,000 years.
We gotta go back to the Church of Athanasius and Leo. Huh?
Yeah, there'll be Athanasius' great comment. They may have the buildings, but we have the faith. So, that looks like what's going to happen again. So.
The trouble is they let them into the faith too much. They have too many termites like Nancy Pelosi.
Well, that's the termites. Speaking of termites, that's what's happened in the education system. The few good teachers who want to teach, know how to teach, and realize there's a problem, they're the ones who are marginalized or eliminated. They don't get tenure. They're always being disciplined for some false reason. And, the incompetents are always protected.
This is a new left strategy in the 60s, to infiltrate the education system, take it over and hollow it out.
Hollow it out and fill it up with socialists. Because I remember when I was in high school, the teachers went on strike for pay, for better pay. And they got the students involved. One or two of the activist teachers who were real politically active in the community started trying to get the students involved, and it wound up that the student body went on strike for a day. They walked out of class. A few of us didn't. We went, we stayed in class, but our teacher wasn't there. So we asked the administrator who came to our class, can we go to the library and do independent studies? So 4 or 5 of us went over there to do independent, while everyone else was marching around the front lawn with signs, handmade signs, and teachers more pay and so on.
Well, I think this is what's led to the bullying in school, is they can't teach ethics anymore. So what do they expect?
Well, they can't teach civics. They can't teach government.
No.
We don't receive any ethical instruction. It's not present. They're not receiving it at church if they go to church. You
Yeah.
know, if you go to
So
any of
what
the
they
mainline
expect?
churches, those kids don't receive any training in morals anymore. You know,
No.
it's
So what do they
everyone has
expect? The
their own
student.
truth. Everything is subjective. It's all relative. You cannot run a society that way.
No.
You know, there has to be some objective standard by which
Yeah.
things are judged. And
Well, it's backfired on the left too, because they thought it was going to breed collectivism, but bred just the opposite.
oh yeah, so, well, we're back to Antonio Gramsci.
Yeah.
You know, and his belief that you need to you can't do a revolution with the proletariat. It won't work. It won't work because the proletariat, the workers, the laborers, and the managerial class and the owners of the oligarchs all share one thing in common: their religious beliefs and moral standards.
Yeah.
You need to hollow that out and get rid of it in order. You must undermine the culture, and that's what
And
all
now, instead of getting a revolution, a communist revolution, you just get primate politics. You just get gangs and militias.
yes. We go back too far. This just simply the psychology of all this was not available to Lenin and to Marx, to Lenin, to Stalin, to Mao. The only way to do that is you have to have an extremely repressive society. A police state.
Marx was a big admirer of Rousseau, who romanticized the noble savage.
Yes.
So they thought that was a way to bring back that connection, but of course it's gone. It's noble savage isn't noble. No, the savage is savage.
Well, I'd like to recommend to everyone a video or a series of videos that you can access from our site. The link is there, of John Taylor Gatto. He's a man who's addressed this subject of the need for reform in our educational system, especially the need to abandon this recent development, this No Child Left Behind, which promotes the idea of standardized testing. That you can give this you can bring this Pavlovian psychology into education. That you can treat children as if they are programmable automatons. So please take a look at his videos. He was nominated as Teacher of the Year several times, multiple times in New York before he retired and began a crusade to try to alert people to the dangers of our current education system and the need for its reform. And so please take a look at that. We'll probably continue this discussion next week in a little more detail, and we want to cover Francis Yates, who was an extremely important author, researcher into the Hermetic tradition of the Renaissance. And that was where the promotion of the trivium and the quadrivium for the masses began. Before it had been in church-sponsored education for the clergy and higher education, but it became promoted for everyone in all universities.
Yeah.
And that
the Comenius came out of the tradition, which was the Montessori schools are a direct descendant of that.
Yeah. And so we need to discuss her. She's an important author. She's sort of been sidelined and minimalized for quite some time now. Hopefully she'll get a revival. There seems to be some revival of these types of authors and researchers and these scholars from these earlier periods as parents begin homeschooling their children and going back to the traditional program of grammar, logic, rhetoric, and then the quadrivium with the higher subjects as well. So,
well, I was reading Robert K.G. Temple, who also takes on controversial subjects. And he says there's about 12 people in the world who can do real research, like, say, a Francis Yates.
no, there just aren't people who can, because they're not trained in the universities anymore. They come out with a BA, and they're not competent. Most people who start a BA program in any university in this country have to go back and take basic English because they can't read the texts they're going to be studying and understand them. And they still don't do very well when they get into the PhD level. So they're not able to do the research, and they're not able to convey the information effectively and efficiently. So, all right, well, I think we'll close off for this evening. I'd like to thank our co-host, Eric Hoffman, for being with us. Please go to his blog at processidealism.blogspot.com. He's got a number of very interesting essays. I'd encourage you to explore those. And please leave him some comments and observations. If you'd like us to discuss some of those essays and ideas, please send us a comment at WIRTV, that's our Twitter hashtag, or at our email, david@weekinreview.tv or eric@weekinreview.tv, and we'll be happy to discuss those and to try to explore them in a more in-depth manner. Also, we'd like to thank our other co-host and producer, Daniel Moran, who's with us at the control panel here in the studio. We'd like to refer you to his blog, danielheath.com. And please take a look at Daniel's blog. And again, if you have any comments, criticisms, observations, or if there's something you'd like us to discuss more in depth about what he's been researching, please let us know, and we'll be happy to do that as well. And next week, we'll continue our discussion of education, the need for reform here in America, and we'll talk about Francis Yates, one of the great researchers and one of the great Renaissance scholars. I think she and C.S. Lewis are probably the two principal researchers in that subject in
English. Yeah.
In English. Yates was probably more the principal historian, and Lewis was the principal literarian who did literature, poetry, etc. So thank you again for joining us. We're happy to be with you. We hope you'll join us next week. I'm David Smith, and this is Week in Review.
The GSA wasted millions of taxpayers' money. Do you have a comment?
Amateurs. We're just doing the cartoon.